Hi, everyone.
Hey, morning.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Morning, everyone.
Sunil, Suresh.
Hey, morning.
Hi. Okay, so the panel is about the visibility gap, agentic AI security, and our panelists are, so I'm going to introduce Sunil over here. Sunil is the CISO at Glean. Sunil, you want to introduce quickly yourself?
Sure. So Nil Agrawal, as Ankita mentioned, the Chief Security Officer at Glean. For folks who might not know Glean, Glean started as an enterprise search company. And then when ChatGPT was launched, November 22, we started having our own version of chatbot, but more focused on enterprises. And of course, now the big focus for the company is all agentic AI. So, very good timing, Ankita, on the topic.
Definitely, Sunil. I mean, Glean has been, everyone, I guess, will know Glean over here. Glean has been one of the pioneers in building, in helping, people build AI agents, especially in enterprises. So, thank you. Thanks for joining, Sunil. Suhail, the head of cybersecurity CISO at ChargeBee, and a good friend. Suhail, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yep, absolutely. Suhail, ChargeBee, I've been here at ChargeBee for about 4 years now, doing all things cyber. For those of you who don't know, ChargeBee, it's a subscription management. It's a SaaS fintech where SaaS horizontal, we solve the billing, subscription management, and revenue growth management problems for the CFOs of SaaS companies. Uh, Ankita, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Suhail, for joining this. I know it's been a little bit of back and forth, but thank you. Thanks for joining. Suyesh from Bamboo HR, he's the CISO there. Suyesh, hi. You want to give an
Uh,
intro?
Good morning, everyone. Hello, good morning. And my name is Suyash Karki. I am with Bamboo HR as a CISO, and we are an HRIS and payroll SaaS company serving small, medium businesses across the world.
Yep. So we have AI company, we have fintech, we have HR, and now uh, Mukund Sharma, Deputy CISO at Chime. You want
Yeah,
to introduce yourself?
yeah. Nice to meet everyone. My name is Mukund. I lead security at Chime. For those who don't know what Chime is, it's a fintech that does banking as a service. Been here for about 5 years. Happy to be on this panel. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Mukund, for joining. Awesome. So fintech, AI, HR. So amazing. All industries covered. Let's start, guys. So the panel is going to be around the visibility gap on agents and AI. And the reason for this as the first session is because when we did the survey, when and in the last few months since we've been doing agentic security, this has been the constant theme in every organization, every conversation I have. So that's why I kept the visibility gap as the first panel. And let's talk about it. Let's talk about what that is, what that entails for the conference, for the organizations. So, first question to the panelist over here: shadow AI versus shadow IT. What's the fundamental difference? Meaning, we all know shadow IT has been a concern, or it's a big security program generally for the last 20 years or so, and IT word kind of changes over there, but now it's shadow AI. What is the fundamental difference? How does it change the program? Is it the same as we used to have in the last 10, 20 years, or is it fundamentally different? So I'll start with maybe Sunil. Do you want to answer?
Sure. So, Ankita, as you said, shadow IT has been a problem for what, good 15 plus years. Shadow IT is more about, unsanctioned tools, that your enterprise might be using. And the problem there is, you don't have visibility into where my data is. Now, with shadow AI, it is just not about where my data is. It's about unsanctioned autonomy. So, what I mean by that, and Debashish, the reason I think that this is different from shadow IT is because it's just not about where my data is. Rather, who is looking at my data? Who is thinking about my data? Who's reasoning on my data and who's taking action on my data. That's what I mean by unsanctioned autonomy. Now, the challenges are very different. With shadow IT, the problem was very static. Okay, where's my data? I get a list of my shadow IT tools. Now I know I can quantify the risk. With shadow AI, this is a lot more dynamic. Why? Because there are LLMs involved. There are prompts involved, there's memory involved. Now, MCP came about, and just when we were getting a handle on MCP, then skills came about, and now it's about plugins, which wrap skills and many other things. So as you can see, this is fastly moving and highly dynamic environment. So I would say shadow AI brings in a completely different attack vector that shadow AI we never had to deal with. The visibility gap is increasing to the point, Ankita, you were talking about in the previous conversation. Yes, the innovation is amazing. The power is amazing, but so is the visibility gap.
Got it. No, wonderful. I think, I mean, we had a chat a little bit on this, Sunil, earlier, and it's, according to me, of course, it's fundamentally different. But, as CISOs, I'd like to hear more from you also, Sohail. What is your opinion there? And, building up on what Sunil said.
Yeah, I mean, nothing much to say on. I think nothing more to say on probably on the shadow ID part of it, but I think shadow AI. I think in my context is more around the unobserved data processing and decisioning that is changing continuously and autonomously. But there are three key areas, where I find I think the key difference. One is from a risk perspective, and the unit of risk is different. When you talk about shadow IT, the risky unit in the asset, the risky unit is an asset. Uh, it could be a server, it could be a SaaS app, it could be an endpoint, API key, etc. Where risk is largely where the data can be stored and accessed. So quite static. However, when you talk about shadow IT, the risky unit is a flow. It's a data flow and the model behavior in context of the models, the context, the tool calls, the outputs, the instruction processing, and so on. So risk is how the data is transformed and what actions are taken because of it. Now, that's one. The second key difference, which I articulate typically is the data egress is high frequency and harder to see. When you talk about shadow IT, the data egress trends are largely predictable and batchy. File syncs, exports, backups. You can offer there are often this can be often figured out using discovery tools like say CASB, DLP, some network shaping, app inventorization, and so on and so forth through a financial reconciliation. But in context of shadow AI, egress is per interaction. It's every prompt can leak. Sensitive data can leave as a raw prompt, as a raw text in the prompts. Some compressed summaries, uh, embedding into a vector DB, a model outputs to an email, chat, uh, customer success tickets, code, and so on. So I think the core takeaway is basically, the shadow AI turns the occasional exports into a continuous micro egress events where visibility becomes an important aspect. The third key change, I mean, or rather, the third key difference is the change rate and the drifts are the multiplier. In context of shadow IT, the software changes or the asset changes, are not as constant. They usually go through patch cycles, through admin controls, and so on and so forth. If at all, there's a reasonable sense of visibility which is there. But in context of shadow AI, I think behavior changes daily, or I would say, it almost continuously mutates in form of prompts, edits, model and version swaps. In context of MCP, constantly evolving, MCP tools and actions and so on and so forth. So I think just to summarize, probably, shadow AI increases, with a behavioral drift, even if the app inventory looks stable. I mean, so that's the way I will summarize the difference between AI, shadow IT and shadow AI.
Got it.
Back to you, Ankita.
Thank you. Thanks, Will. No, this continuous change is actually one of the biggest key, right? This I hear from everyone else also that it's fundamentally very different from the shadow IT we have seen. And maybe Mukund and your thought on this.
Yeah, I think both Sunil and Suel actually covered most of what I would cover. I think they did a good job of that. I think the one thing which we are seeing slightly different is also people who could never build stuff are now able to build, but at the cost of them not realizing what it makes to maintain it. In the past with Shadow IT, even if they were not maintaining it, they would still have someone who is going and maintaining it for them. Right now, it's coming at the cost of them not realizing, okay, what does it mean to actually go maintain it? How do you actually deal with model upgrades? How do you actually deal with when you want to go add a new feature and stuff to that? So I think in some ways people are coming back and asking for more help in some of that. But I think other than that, I think what they covered is pretty much in line to how I was thinking about it.
Got it. Perfect. And Suresh, your opinion on this?
Yeah, I think most of the panelists already covered majority of the points. The only sort of metaphor I want to include here would be if you think of shadow AI versus shadow IT. To me, shadow IT is like if you're thinking about a construction site, for example, right, trying to build a building. Shadow IT is more like an employee bringing their own unauthorized power drill to the construction site and doing whatever they want with that power drill. Shadow AI, on the other hand, is like bringing an unauthorized subcontractor itself, right? And they come in, they start making their own decisions on how to build the foundation, and they would not consult or talk to the foreman of what needs to happen. They're just kind of doing whatever comes to their mind. So that's the kind of difference that I wanted to highlight. Is certainly, I think all the panelists already mentioned, it's a difference between the tool versus now somebody that comes in and does things and makes decisions and takes actions. And that's the way I would like to maybe metaphorize this a little bit.
Yeah. No, this is a very good example. And somebody on the comment also, Chad is also saying that it's kind of unpredictable, right? It's undeterministic, and that's kind of the theme in everyone's conversation over here. Okay, so let's move on to maybe understanding. So in 2025, for sure, visibility was the biggest gap, and this we've kind of seen in all our conversations in 2025. But in 2026, at least from my perspective, and 2026 is just starting. It's been only, I think, 45 days or so. So I haven't seen visibility as the biggest gap. I feel like most of the organizations have kind of find some kind of control over visibility. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm talking to organizations who have found that visibility gap to be controlled. But is that true? Is this still the biggest gap in agentic AI security, or not really? Maybe starting Suresh from you this time.
For sure, yeah. I mean, I think visibility is still foundational in my opinion, but the type of visibility has evolved from what we saw in 2025 versus entering into this new era of agentic AI. It certainly has evolved, in my opinion, from the question of, okay, what apps, what AI LLMs are we running, to what is an agent currently doing, currently thinking, what other communications are happening, and what type of actions are being conducted through some of those agents. And so, in my opinion, that is still visibility. We still need to know not only what apps or agents are running, but what they're doing, what their logics and reasonings are. And we might be able to see, with limited visibility today, we might be able to see an API call from an agent, but if we don't have visibility into what part of that API call made by an agent was a legitimate request, or was it an agent skill that was triggered by a prompt injection attack? If we don't know that, then that is still a big gap in visibility we're working with. And being in security, that's a nightmare, right? It's certainly, I think, to your point, Ankita, we made a lot of progress in understanding the inventory of, okay, what are some of the AI apps and agents that are running, but do we know what's under the hood, what those agents are, what identity are they coming with, what are they doing, what data are they querying, or data they're exfiltrating, and so forth. So I think there's there's that shift in what I describe as visibility in 2026, where we're now in a position to look more and more under the hood and understand a little bit more about what actions are being taken by some of these agentic AI tools.
Yeah, got it. So this is very interesting, Suresh. I think that makes sense, right? Like, so you kind of have a handle on what all agents or MCPs or tools, in terms of inventory are there, but probably not, maybe in different organizations, probably not at the deeper level. Now people are asking questions such as, do I have visibility into data? Do I have visibility into identity and, actions those agents are taking? So maybe that is the gap in 2026. And so rightly put. Sunil, what's your point of view? And I'm interested to know because from especially from Glean perspective, also you guys a lot, I mean, help employees adopt AI, build agents. So, what's your point of view here?
Yeah.
Is visibility still a gap?
So I would say, when I think, first of all, when I think visibility, I think about it as, before the fact, before the agents are executing. And then there's the other aspect, which is the observability, which is after the agent has executed. So let's say we put both of them under the visibility umbrella. I would say 2024 was a year where we got good visibility into your chatbots, your LLMs, your prompts. 2025, we got good visibility into the various agentic apps running. 2026 is where we got to go deeper. That means it's just not about, hey, what agents are running, correct? And what MCP servers I'm using, what are the tools I'm using. Now we got to go beyond. Skills are the thing, correct? What skills are being used? Within our environment itself, we are about 1,000-person company. We have 2,000 plus skills. We have about 200 odd MCP servers that we are using internally, but 2,000 skills, and they keep on getting created at a much faster rate. Now, people are wrapping the skills into something called a cursor or a Claude plugin. So that's a whole new entity that came about. So I would say the depth of visibility, the need keeps on increasing. That's one. The second part is, and this is all before the fact, correct? Now, while it's executing, I need visibility into at every phase, what's the identity used by the agent? What data did it actually access? Not only what data it can access, but what did it actually access? And what was the reasoning path it took? If there is an agentic loop, during that loop, what were the different things did it try? Which tools with what parameters were invoked? What was the impact? So that's after the fact. That's what I call agent observability. So I would say 2026 would be the year where we go way deeper into understanding all the components of an agent before the fact, and after the agent executes, having the ability to reconstruct everything that the agent did. And only once you do that, you can analyze it, that did the agent go off the ranch? Did it go off the guardrails? Correct? And what are the guardrails I need to apply next? That's how I think about it. So yes, this is a journey. We have solved some aspects of it, but there is a lot more work to do for all of us.
Got it. This is, I mean, I like perfect, right? In a way, and building upon what Suyesh said, it was, and the way to put it is 2025 was about visibility. You have the inventory of agents, MCPs, LLMs, but 2026 is about observability, which is going deeper into data access and identity and all of that. This is wonderful. And somebody also mentioned over here, Nidul, spot on. Insight. Suhail, Mukund, maybe any thought from you on this, building upon what Suyesh and Sunil said?
I I honestly don't think people have a good grasp of visibility also. I don't think whoever is saying that they have a good grasp of visibility, in my opinion, they don't really know that they have a good grasp of visibility. I think it's still a very fundamental problem of even like just understanding what people are doing. I would say even more with this year with things running more locally on your machine, and we've seen things with CloudBot or OpenClaw or everything else that's happening. Like, is it you running it or your agent running it and what is actually happening with more of the plan mode, and is that still considered part of the visibility of what an agent is doing, or is that after it's not because it's not yet executed? Like at what point do you define what how do you articulate it? So I think uh, we have a fundamental problem of actually that the agents are like reusing the human identity, so we really cannot distinguish that as a very fundamental thing. The other one is you really can't distinguish what employee or person is doing on the machine versus what an agent is doing anymore. Agents have gotten really good to even like in browser use and everything else right now. So I think very foundationally, I think this problem is going to be a problem for quite a while. I don't think it's a solved problem in any way, in my opinion. So.
Got it. No, thank you. Thanks, Mukund, for that perspective. Yeah, as you're also, I think, a little bit referring to more, this sure, there is a little bit of visibility, but there is more deeper sort of understanding needed to be built across organization about who has the access, what are the employees doing, what are the agent actions, all of those things. So totally makes sense. And every organization is having different kind of maturity when it comes to visibility, right? Some probably started way back in 2023, maybe, but some are still, starting that program. So I see lots of different opinions there also. Sohail, what about you?
Yeah, in fact, I just referred back to your, the Agentic security rating report that Akto published. Just 21% of the respondents actually feel that they have a healthy visibility, and that healthy visibility, can actually, swing, can have really wild swings. So I think, yeah, definitely, I think visibility is still, I think, the number one prerequisite gap. But 2026, it's also about, I think, the risk outcome, and the major risk outcome is basically the agentic actions. Actions are actually happening with insufficient identity, and the privilege. So when we really talk about, I think when we say visibility is number one prerequisite gap, what we're saying is that businesses struggle to answer some very, very basic and foundational questions. For example, which agents exist, um, what data they can access, what tools they can invoke. Can they invoke CI/CD, email, Jira, and so on and so forth? And what did they actually do end to end? And that's exactly where I would tie it back to Sunil's articulation around observability, and I think that becomes a key pivot there. So I think without that, I think every control is just a guesswork. Now, fast forward 2026, the biggest risk outcome is an agent can actually take a real world action with more privilege than it should ideally have. So the shift is, the agentic systems moved from chat to the workflow automation, and that fundamentally introduces, I think, two compounding changes. One, the action servers exploded. I think one of the co-panelists was just hinting towards that. They can take real world actions, and second one is the identity is often borrowed and overpowered. So an agent can frequently run as a shared service account or a developer, or as a developer token, or have a very, very broad OAuth grants and so on. So I mean, in a nutshell, observability, I mean, while visibility is a fundamental pivot point, it's the most foundational, non-negotiable, but it eventually has to evolve to observability, where we're really recording, observing, and using those visibility and those mentions to really improve governance around the actions. I'll probably summarize it that.
Got it. Thanks, Sohail. So I think, your point is also, which is what everyone else is saying, that, it's all coming down to identity at the end of the day, and agent actions, and, deeper understanding of what an agent can do, and observability in that. Correct?
Correct.
And
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably just add one thing around that is basically more about the action provenance, and that becomes an important aspect. And I think that's going to be the theme for 2026.
Perfect. Yeah, Sunil just gave us the headline of this Aktonomy conference, right? Like 2026 is about the observability, 2025 was about visibility. So amazing. Okay, so moving on to the next, which is okay. So this I hear quite a bit from our work at Akto with different organizations, sometimes there's a lot of AI work being done in large organizations. There is AI teams, there is AI compliance team, there is AI governance team, there is AI security teams, and there is engineering team who's doing some work on AI. So visibility, um, is that a CISO problem? Meaning, like, is that a security problem, or is that an engineering problem? Is that a business problem? What do you guys think? Where does it sort of land, and who should be accountable in organization for visibility? So at least in my perspective, I've seen different teams owning visibility. Most of the organizations have security teams owning visibility, but then there is like a observability team, AI team owning visibility separately. So what is your opinion? Maybe Mukund, starting from you.
I think it depends on the context of how you're looking at it from a perspective. If you're worried about costs, if you're worried about the availability of it, or how your foundational product is running, or you're worried about the privacy aspect of it. So I think different teams have different purviews of how they want to look into this problem. I think security teams usually end up owning it because you're not really an owner, and people come knocking to their doors when something goes wrong. And it's their team that's staying up trying to deal with an incident. So I think that's kind of why I've seen more security teams start to own it. But I would say this is kind of similar to an era which will evolve with time in terms of like adoption of mobile or any other technology in the past. Is like I think this will have multiple owners until it becomes part of the DNA of the particular company or how a particular organization is run. So that's how I'm at least getting visibility into it right now. So
Got it. Sohail, what's your comment over there?
It's actually I mean, it's a very, very it's a very, very controversial issue, and I think a lot of it also depends on structurally how different teams are placed and organized. Never to say, the CISO and the risk functions always have an important role when it comes to AI visibility, a more pivotal role, I would say. It may, but I think the model, and based on my discussion with my peers in the industry, one of the models that I've actually seen, which is working quite well, probably reasonably successfully, is basically, think of it like a business risk problem, which is co-owned by by a CISO, risk, and the IT function. Why? Because the cost part of it is actually owned by the IT, the platform team, and they are the enablers for the entire organization. Why risk function? Because a lot of aspects pertaining to usage, the safe use of AI and certain other guardrails from a risk and privacy perspective coming from there, and then from a data leakage standpoint, from an acceptable IT usage standpoint, any ungoverned tool, increasing the attack surface that comes into the CISO's purview. So I think it's a business problem which actually typically, more of a core model, which primarily with primary ownership with more of an IT or a platform in some context, and a more of a security function. The other thing is also, so think of it like, maybe purely from a RACI model. A business sets the use cases and also defines a level, or also co-defines a level of risk tolerance in partnership with CISO and the risk function. CISO sets the policy and the oversight. Platform or the IT team implements the controls. The agent ownership, the cost and financial management, and builds the basic, the underlying instrumentation and the engineering for the visibility and the observability stack. And then, they have consumers on top of it, like security is one, business is another one, risk and privacy is another one, and so on and so forth. Finance is another one. So this is the model that I've seen, which is working quite well in some of the organizations which are closely known.
Got it. No, perfect. Any comment on this, Sunil? So, your team, I mean, your company is also helping, employees adopt AI. So you must be seeing all this across organization. What's your thought
Yeah.
there?
So Yeah, speaking from the perspective of how we do things here at Glean, at the same time, how do our customers see it, correct? Because we also provide a Gen AI platform. I would say I would quite agree with Suhail. This is not who owns the problem, correct? It's a racy model. See, if the business wants to introduce OpenClaw, they can't be saying, see, so you are responsible for securing it, correct? Because inherently there's just so many attack vectors that you can't rely on the security team to be guarding that. Correct? So it is a joint ownership because the business has to drive the use cases. They have to tell you what is the risk appetite. Correct? And then your platform engineering team can build certain amount of tooling. And of course, the security team will create the policies, the guardrails, because you have to get your security team involved. And gone are the days when the security team would be saying and blocking adoption of AI, correct? Now it is all about saying yes and providing the policies and the guardrails. So the three teams have to work together, all the three teams that you identified. Correct? And I would say finally, the risk has to be owned, the AI risk. So it's more about rather than just AI visibility, who is accountable for AI risk. Correct? Again, this would fall into the CISO or whichever the risk team, depending upon the organization. But the business team is a big driver. And that's what we are seeing amongst our customer base as well. We have chief AI officer, chief data officer who are driving the use cases, who are driving, what kind of data should be accessible by AI, what are the eventual outcomes. And they partner very closely with the security team to make sure that becomes a reality and the risk is acceptable.
Got it. Yeah, so I mean, hearing from all of you guys, it's basically a joint ownership, right? It's kind of follows the RACI model. I think this AI visibility is a little different from any other kind of visibility in the sense that I have not seen business really owning and driving lots of other visibility projects. But here, this is AI visibility because AI adoption is so key to an organization's success today. It's this really is a business problem, and then it sort of get combined with the engineering taking accountability, security taking accountability, risk taking accountability, and so on. Yeah, so any comments, Suyesh, from you on this?
Yeah, I think everybody have covered a lot of the points that I would want to make in this topic. One thing again, it's a team sport, in my opinion, still, because this is such a novel area for any business, either building with AI or operating with AI or productizing AI, whatever the case may be. Some of the risk ownership conversation definitely, I think, is almost like a hot potato item, at least from what I've seen so far, right? Because the risk is really owned by who knows about a particular use case and the technology being used to support those use cases the most. But eventually, I do see a world where all three of the parties that you've described have a role to play in managing this risk, because I 100% agree with everybody when we said it is a business risk, right? At the end of the day, if a marketing person comes in and introduces an agent to their marketing stack that starts going and changing, I don't know, the pricing of the product, that's just not a security risk. That's not a platform engineering risk. That's a business risk. So that ends up impacting revenue. So I think the way I look at it is that engineering builds the road, security puts up the speed limits and speed those speed bumpers. But really, the business actually decides where that road leads to and what to drive on that road, right? So I think ultimately it has to be a part of the enterprise risk management program. Board needs to be informed because the risk is non-trivial, especially when agentic AI is in the conversation. So ultimately there's a place for AI risk to be really described as an enterprise level risk and discussed all the way at the board level and executive level.
Got it. No, so I think you built up on Sunil's point that there is AI risk and then there is AI visibility. So I think AI risk definitely is a risk function, and then AI visibility can be, I mean, driven by business, but is really a joint effort. I'm curious. It's not part of this question, but I'm curious to know, because you brought in board, Suesh, is it AI risk is a board level conversation these days?
If it isn't yet, it has to be. Again, at least I work for a technology company, so AI transformation is one of our key priorities at the business level, right? It's not something that engineering is embracing on or embarking on or just security is doing. It's really across the board. And I know there are a lot of companies that have taken the approach of, hey, let's just slow down and block the usage of AI. We're not one of those, right? I think if we were to kind of look at the spectrum of different types of risk-averse companies, we're on the far right side of, okay, let's go, experiment, innovate, obviously with specific guardrails and rules and responsibilities assigned, but really, so our role in our company, my role, I have established a responsible AI council, and I chaired that, but then I have recruited a cross-functional group of leaders to really talk about, okay, let's innovate responsibly, right? Let's talk about safety, let's talk about ethics, transparency, observability, traceability, security, privacy, all of that. And we are the ones that are expected to really talk about risk and bring it up to the attention of all the decision makers. And part of that responsibility is me going up to the board and presenting something on AI related risks. And honestly, they're really interested and excited about learning about some of the risk as well, because that's in the news every day. And obviously, being in the SaaS industry, you guys all know what's happening with a lot of the SaaS companies today with AI disruption there. So certainly, I think we have the right moment to capture people's attention and bring this as a enterprise level risk conversation. And at least in my position, I have not had an issue with being able to articulate that as a business level risk.
Got it. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that, Suesh. And it's wonderful to know you have an AI, responsible AI council, and what it means to your organization in terms of AI risk. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And I haven't seen lots of companies do this, having like a separate council. So this is pretty interesting initiative. Okay, so the next one is. You all are looking at AI security programs in your organization. If you have to give one advice to CISOs out there, and there are lots of participants who are CISOs here. I meet with lots of security teams who are just starting out in their journey, because I mean, yeah, they couldn't do it in 2025. They were still trying to observe the market before they take some action or something. What one advice would you give to those CISOs or cybersecurity teams? Maybe Sunil, maybe starting from you.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you said one lesson learned. That's going to be tough. I'll try to expand it to three things, because if you're just starting, the very, very first thing, kind of continuing from our previous conversation, the use cases, correct? So nail down your use cases. We have seen enough talk about agents, enough talk about AI agents, and of course there's enough research done that many of them don't succeed. The reason they don't succeed is because you don't define your use cases, you don't define your success criteria very clearly. So that's number one, I would say. Work with your business team to define your use cases. Once you have defined that, the two things you should absolutely make sure is what data would be accessible by that agent, because that defines your risk profile for that agent. That's one. The second thing that you would want to do is, hey, what are the actions that you would want to permit this agent to take? Hey, is it only going to create a Jira ticket, send it to a Slack or an email, or is it potentially going to take destructive action? So on the input side, the data available, on the output side, what action can be taken? And is there a human in the loop for the destructive action? So those are the three things. And of course, we can talk about many, many more things that, hey, if you're connecting your MCPs, you are connecting, your tool calls, the LLMs that you are using, whether you have zero data retention and so on. We can talk about a long list, but Ankita, you said, one thing, I expanded it to three, but that's what I would say. Data, the tool actions, and whether human in the loop is involved or not.
Yeah, wonderful, Sunil. No, three is good. I mean, this is really what you need, right? From a CISO perspective, from your perspective, use cases, knowing accessibility of your data by the agents, and the third one Sunil mentioned is actions that an agent can take. If there should be a human in the loop or not, those kind of things. Building upon this, Mukund, you want to take it up?
It's hard to go after Sunil, candidly. So he does a very good job of articulating it. I think the only other thing I will say is be open and explore, and it's not going to be your first iteration is not going to be the first successful one. It's like any new technology or skill, you got to like play around with it. There are some um, tips and techniques that you will learn while you keep playing around with it. And the only thing I would have said that I've learned of later is don't invest too much in any scaffolding of around of a base model. I would say I think more often than not you see those model providers build that into the provider. So I would say anything that has a scaffolding around it that usually is a good thing for you to go explore and learn to build because that's how you learn how to use technology. But you should expect that to be a short-lived endeavor is kind of all I would say. But yeah.
Understood. Awesome. Suhail?
Yeah. I think I'll probably bring in a more non-technical perspective to visibility. A very critical component of building visibility is to really have all the tools and the assets under the under your managed remit, and that managed remit will not happen unless and until you have the business on your side. So a pre-step to really building visibility would be also in terms of really uh, having a conversation with the business. I mean, everybody's in a rush for the AI transformation for their respective businesses. That's asked from the board. That's asked from the leadership. So everybody is just rushing for whatever business use case they can actually embrace AI. And I think that rush is the one that's actually causing the problem. The rush leads to irresponsible actions. So if you really change that connotation to responsible adoption of AI, and then also act as an enabler in the AI transformation for the respective leaders, I think that is something that would help as a pre-step to really building visibility, because that will change the entire connotation of the conversation. That's number one. And the moment this happens, they'll automatically start pivoting with you more, not in a pull mode, but probably not in a pull mode, but more in a push mode. They'll proactively reach out to you. Hey, this is what we are thinking, and we'll proactively start seeking guidance around the aspects, and that automatically will drive the whatever new tools, tech. I think they're really trying to evolve from an AI transformation perspective into a managed remit. And I think that's when the visibility conversation actually starts. And that's the only way to control shadow AI. If the scale team reaches out as a more of a policeman and start policing around that you can do this and you cannot do this, I think that's not going to happen. So that's one. The second aspect is more in terms of how do we really implement, how seamless how seamless you make the adoption. For example, when you talk about, I think Ankita, you, me, and I think Ankush, we've been discussing this about the whole, the whole MCP story around it. So how do you really one of the simple problem statements is how do you really channelize the entire MCP traffic through your MCP gateway? You can establish an MCP gateway, but the biggest problem is how do you really channelize that? So if channelizing that traffic through the MCP gateway depends on 1,000 employees, 2,000 employees taking an action on their local machines. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So how seamless and how transparent you make that change, that it automatically starts, flowing through your enterprise MCP gateway, and then you block the other things, in a more graceful way. And also, how do you really detect when the changes happen on the endpoints, when there is when the smart, when the smart engineers, really try to figure out a bypass. So how do you detect those changes? So I think these are I think some very first order problems and the first principle approach in that we're taking to really address some of these areas. And these are the lessons learned from last 12 months, of my journey into this.
Yeah, Phil, you guys have in ChargeBee really worked on AI risk and AI security programs for the last more than 12 months or something. So these are really good lessons, by the way, everyone who's here as an attendee. Um, all of these guys are really working on AI adoption and secure AI adoption, and these lessons are really fundamental to if you're starting today. If you're not, if you already have experience, great. But if you are starting today, these are great lessons. Maybe Suyesh, you want to add to it?
The only thing I'd maybe add on top of what everybody's said so far is I think being able to understand or assign an ownership of an agent through an identity, unique identity, right? So I know we want to have a good definition of use cases and access permissions and so forth, but some of the most basic things you want to maybe start with there to have that sort of a machine identity registry, for example. The objective there is really twofold, right? Understanding and assigning ownership and accountability, enabling traceability and auditability. And then lastly, it allows you to execute maybe something like a kill switch, which is so important in this day and age, where you suspect or you determine things are going wrong. Being able to pull the plug and reverse what a rogue agent or compromised agent might have executed is just as important as having all of these other guardrails. And unless you have a unique machine identity associated with that agent, you're either going to have to pull the plug on the entire API from being executed or called, or the other alternative would be to just go focus on that particular agent, and that is possible through assignment of unique identity. So that's the only part I think I would maybe add to what everybody else has said.
Got it. Awesome. There are very good comments and questions being asked on the chat itself if anyone wants to answer. Perfect. So I think in some ways everyone touched on it, but I think we can take this as the last question and then we can open to audience for any kind of Q&A. Maybe Mukund, starting from you, is visibility enough, or would you like to have some kind of guardrails and controls, and is that important?
Yeah, I think visibility is needed for you to understand what guardrails you even need. So I think it's the first step, but I don't think anyone wants to stop at visibility. I think we would like to get to a world where we can define what those guardrails are and let people go do what they have to do to make the business successful. So yeah, I think visibility is just the first step, I would say. So the obvious next step would be is how do you put guardrails and how do you write policies on top of it, things in that sense. But yeah.
Okay. So of course, so we need guardrails. Visibility is not enough. Okay. Is maybe Suhail's building up on this?
I think visibility is a great starting point, but guardrail enforcement has to become the default. I mean, all agentic systems must be shipped with the guardrails by default because they can take real actions and not just in text. That's what normally we assume, and I think it's becoming more and more intense as we step forward in 2026. In addition to that, I think both pre-release and the runtime testing and continuous testing becomes a key in an ecosystem which is constantly mutating. You send a prompt, you get a response. You send another prompt, you send the same prompt, after 10 minutes you generate a different response. So I think this is extremely important. And so this may typically include I mean, essentially, from a principal perspective, observe everything, block risky tools in real time. And I think continuous red teaming becomes a key aspect, but visibility still is a starting point for everything else.
Got it. So visibility first, both for you and Mukund, and then I think Sohail, what you added is, of course, guardrails plus also risk assessment and continuous red teaming to understand what the posture is, right? Before you even enforce guardrails, and even to Mukund's point, how do you even enforce guardrails if you don't have visibility? So visibility remains the number one. Okay, then Suresh, to add on this.
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, obviously, visibility is foundational, but so is our guardrails, right? I keep going back to my metaphors, but if I'm building a car that I want that car to go fast, I need to have a dashboard to tell me how I'm doing, and then maybe the side mirrors and rear view mirrors to help me understand what's happening. But those don't just save me from going and hitting a wall, right? We need brakes, we need seat belts to survive that crash, and that to me is guardrails, right? We can have great observability, but without guardrails, we're only going to be seeing what the impact could be, but we could not do anything to stop that impact without the guardrails. So,
Suresh, I'm loving the examples you're bringing.
that just helps me understand this better. I know it's very complex, so sometimes I just kind of rely on simplifying this a little bit. So,
No, very, very, very good. Very nicely put it, actually. For people, for audience, not everyone is, has experience in AI security over here. So it's really very well put. Sunil, last comment from you, and then we'll open for questions.
Sure. Yes, +1, Suresh, I love your metaphors, helps ground all the discussion. Now, talking about, visibility and guardrails, I would say I agree with what everyone has said. Guardrail is very important. We got to understand why. Correct? A traditional software development, is to write software, and the software, given a certain data input, would behave a certain way, and it would always behave that way. Correct? So you could do a lot of shift left and analyze it, get enough visibility, and be reasonably sure that, okay, you are secure or not. AI is completely different. It's a super dynamic system. You open up any agent, it would be a very thin, instruction, sometimes only in natural language. The data it's going to pull in at runtime will be defined at runtime. Correct? The reasoning that the LLM is going to do is only done at runtime. The tools the MCP servers is going to invoke will only happen at runtime. None of that you can predict by just looking at, statically. It has to be at runtime. I talked about observability. Those are the two bookends. Visibility and observability are the two bookends. But right in the middle is about your guardrails, your runtime guardrails. You absolutely need to have. This is way more important than it ever was in the traditional software system. Why? Because everything is built on this non-deterministic engine called LLM. It is making decision on your behalf. It's reasoning about it, correct? It's iterating over it as part of the agentic loop. And not to say that the same model you ask it 10 times, it will give you a slightly different answer. Those models are evolving. Every 2 months, the old model gets deprecated. There's a new model.
Yeah.
So you just can't be doing things once. It has to be even a continuous guardrail, correct? And observability at the same time has to be continuous. So I would say, as just summary, I would say this is very different from any static software development we have done. Visibility, guardrail, observability, all the three are going to be way more important than they ever were in the software industry. That's all I would like to say.
Thank you. Thank you so much. On that note, Sunil, this is perfect. So visibility is not enough, guys. Of course, this guardrails, as everyone said, is fundamental. Sunil said runtime guardrails are so important because action is being taken in runtime. So you need that guardrail to act in runtime. That's so important. And not just guardrails, runtime guardrails being implemented, but it has to be continuous also. It has to continuously look at what actions are being taken. So thank you, Sunil, for that thought. Okay, so we have maybe 5 minutes left, less than that, for questions. We'll take very quick thing. Maybe one of you can answer. What does observability mean from a CISO perspective? Maybe Sunil, since you brought observability, why don't you answer?
Yeah, so I would enhance that. Of course, we all know observability, correct? I mean, we use the Datadog, the Splunks of the world, correct, to observe our SaaS applications as to, how did the request come in, what were the internal workings of the application, what were, the state changing operations. We do all of that for SaaS application. For agents, you got to go a level deeper. You got to go because, hey, as part of this agent execution, what were all the data that you accessed? Why did you access? So first of all, what was the intent of the agent specification? How did the LLM plan and reason about? And as part of the planning and reasoning, how did it decide which data it should access? How did it go about accessing that data? Once that data was accessed, what was the subsequent reasoning it did? What was the introspection it did? And then what was the subsequent tool invocation it decided that, okay, out of these tools, I need to call tool X, Y, and Z with these parameters. And after the tool was invoked, what was the impact? So I would say this is the agent observability means you should be able to create the entire end-to-end life cycle of that agent. What did that agent do? Why did it do? What was the impact? So this is not generic observability. And that's where, you got to look for any special, I would say, I'm still looking for that ideal agent observability platform. If anyone in the audience has a recommendation, please do drop me a note. But I would say I'm looking for something that goes to that level of depth.
Wow.
Correct? Because you got to reconstruct the entire agent lifespan and then do it again and again, and then detect anomalies so that we as the security folks can know, did it go off the guardrail and what are the additional guardrails I got to implement.
Got it. So continuous observability on and can answer all the questions like what did the agent do? Who are they controlling? What is this agent? All of those, right? So
including the reasoning aspect. That's a very important part so that I can know that if it's not reasoning appropriately, then potentially I can go back, change my agent specification so that I can instruct the LLM to reason appropriately.
correct. Awesome. So this is the definition of observability. Whoever asked this question, I think we can take maybe one more question. Maybe I'll take this
Ankita,
one. Yeah.
yeah. Ankita, I'll just add probably, I think Sunil, I think all articulate everything, I think very, very precisely. I'll just add one more thing, which is basically the drift part of it. Drift in action and probably, drift from the actual intention of use or on actual intended actions. So I think that I'd probably add that one level of, I think, extra level or layer of visibility from an observability stack.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Like
Actions.
drift monitoring.
Yeah, drift monitoring. Thank you. Thanks, Suhail and Sunil. I'll take one more question, which is there are lots of questions, and guys, we will answer them after the event also and send back to you the answers. But the question I will take is, what are your top priorities for production readiness for AI agent systems from Ridul Pax? Anyone over here wants to take it? So essentially checklist for production readiness for agentic system.
I'll take a stab at it.
Yeah.
And I think what Sunil and Suhail mentioned, right? You want to understand, for the most part, understand what and how behind the use of any of these agentic AI tools, and really the intent, right? I think being able to understand what that particular agent is capable of doing and what it is supposed to be doing based on what it's assigned to do, being able to understand that that flow from end to end and capture that to be able to monitor for any type of drift is going to be key for having both a good balance of both preventative and detective, right? And on the preventative side, certainly, like I mentioned earlier, have an agent identity registry or some sort of identity assigned to agents. Stop treating agents like tools. Gone are the days we have to unlearn a lot of things of treating AI as just a tool to now we need to treat these AI tools as employees. And so everything starts with identity, assigning accountability, assigning traceability, and being able to balance between both the preventative side of controls as well as detective. If things do go wrong, how do you capture all of the actions in a way that you're able to reproduce and stop and mitigate the risk? For me, those are basic things I would look for to get anything production ready in these situations, I would say.
Thank you. Thanks, Suresh, for that answer. So identity is key, right? Understanding what all agents can do in the drift monitoring before you can say that this is production ready. Thank you all.